Hey everyone, and welcome back. You guys requested a deep dive on some really cool new AI research. And honestly, I'm super excited to get into this.
Yeah, this is pretty cutting edge stuff.
We're talking about AI and how it's getting really good at reasoning, like scarily good. Seriously.
Moving fast.
You specifically wanted the rundown on this new model DeepSeek-R1 and how it compares to the giants out there, like OpenAI.
Yeah, how does it stack up against the competition? That's the big question.
To do this, we've got a whole stack of research papers, study guides, even FAQs all about this DeepSeek-R1. I'm already geeking out just looking at this stuff.
Well, luckily you've got me here to help break it down.
Our resident AI whisperer, who can translate this dense research into something we can all understand.
I'll do my best.
So to get started, DeepSeek-R1 is developed by DeepSeek AI, and it's their first foray into reasoning models. But get this. They're open sourcing it along with its API. They want the whole AI community to play around with it.
Which is kind of unheard of for a model this sophisticated. It shows a real commitment to transparency.
Right. Okay, so before we get into the nitty-gritty of DeepSeek-R1, we have to talk about its predecessor, DeepSeek-R1 This is where the story gets really interesting, because DeepSeek-R1 was all about seeing what AI could learn completely on its own.
Like throwing it in the deep end without any floaties.
Exactly. No textbooks, no hand-holding, just rewards for getting things right.
Basically.
So like teaching someone math, but you only tell them yes or no to their answers. No formulas. Hey everyone, and welcome back. You guys requested it because DeepSeek-R1, but you only tell them yes or no to their answers. No formulas, no examples.
Right.
Would they even be able to figure out like basic addition?
That was the question. And surprisingly, DeepSeek-R1 started to develop its own strategies for problem solving.
Really?
And what's even cooler is that it actually learned to take its time on the harder problems, which led to more accurate answers.
Hold on. The AI realized it needed to slow down and think things through. It wasn't just like spitting out random answers.
Nope. It had this kind of aha moment during training where it learned to reevaluate its initial approach and spend more time reasoning. And that's when the accuracy really jumped.
Okay, that's seriously impressive. It's like it had a light bulb moment.
It really did.
So what does this tell us about the potential of AI? Could it develop problem-solving techniques we haven't even thought of?
That's the million-dollar question. And it's one that has a lot of researchers feeling both excited and a little nervous.
I bet. So DeepSeek-R1 was this huge breakthrough, but it wasn't perfect, right?
Right. It had some issues. Like it had trouble with readability and would sometimes mix up different languages when it was trying to reason things out.
Oh, so like it would start in English and then suddenly switch to French?
Yeah, something like that. And all of those issues are what led to the development of DeepSeek-R1. It's like the refined version.
Okay, so how did they improve on the original?
Well, they gave DeepSeek-R1 something called a cold start, which means it starts off with a small set of really high-quality examples to guide its initial training.
So instead of 0 textbooks, our math student now gets like a couple of solved problems to kind of point them in the right direction.
Exactly. And DeepSeek-R1 also goes through multi-stage training that uses both reinforcement learning and supervised fine-tuning.
So it's like a supercharged learning process.
You could say that.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Walk me through these training stages. What happens first?
First, you have the cold start, fine-tuning, where it learns from thousands of well-structured examples. And this helps establish both reasoning and readability right out of the gate.
So they're tackling those initial issues head on.
Exactly. Then comes the reasoning-oriented reinforcement learning, where they trained it to stick to one language while reasoning.
Ah, so no more Franglish.
Right. And then they use rejection sampling to create even more training data. But we're not just talking about reasoning tasks anymore. They're including things like writing and answering factual questions.
So they're throwing a lot at it at this point.
Yep, making sure it's well-rounded. And finally, they use reinforcement learning again. But this time, it's all about aligning DeepSeek-R1 with human preferences. They're looking for answers that are not only correct, but also helpful and harmless.
So it's not just about being smart. It's about being a good AI citizen.
Precisely. Now, all of this training, of course, leads to the big question. How does it actually perform?
Yeah, that's what we really want to know. And how does it stack up against its rival, OpenAI 01-1217? It's time for the benchmark battle.
Get ready for some surprises.
Oh, you got me on the edge of my seat. Let's hear it.
Okay, so to really put DeepSeek-R1 to the test, they used a bunch of standardized tests called benchmarks.
Benchmarks?
Yeah, they're basically like the SATs for AI. They measure its skills in different areas.
Okay, so like math and reading comprehension for AI.
Exactly. Math,
Yeah.
coding, even creative writing. One of the toughest ones they use is called the ODME,
OE-me. What's that stand for?
American Invitational Mathematics Examination.
Oh, wow. That's
Eh.
like for the top math students in the country, right?
Yep, the kind of exam that gives most people nightmares.
I can only imagine. So how did DeepSeek-R1 do?
Well, it got a pass at one score of 79.8%.
So almost 80% of the time, it got those super hard math questions, right? On the first try.
Exactly, which is actually slightly better than OpenAI 1217 score on the same benchmark.
Wow. So it's not just keeping up with the big leagues, it's actually beating them.
Yeah. And it's a similar story with another really challenging math test called Math 500. DeepSeek-R1 scored 97.3% on that one.
Okay, so clearly DeepSeek-R1 can crunch numbers with the best of them. But let's be real, most of us aren't using AI to solve like advanced calculus problems. What about something more practical, like coding? Can it write code?
Oh, absolutely. For that, they used a platform called Code Forces, where human programmers compete against each other.
Oh, cool. So it's like going head-to-head with the pros.
Yep. And DeepSeek-R1 achieved a really impressive ELO rating of 2029.
ELO rating. I need a translation on that one. What does 2029 actually mean in the world of coding?
Basically, it's a ranking system. The higher the ELO, the better the coder. And DeepSeek-R1's score puts it in the top 3.7% of human participants.
So we're talking like seriously elite level coding skills here.
Definitely. But they didn't just stop at math and coding. They also wanted to see how well DeepSeek-R1 could handle general knowledge, understanding complex information. So they used a bunch of other benchmarks like MMLU and GPQA Diamond.
Okay, and those tests.
MMLU tests knowledge across a whole bunch of different subjects. And GPQA Diamond focuses on really tricky question answering scenarios.
So basically they wanted to make sure DeepSeek-R1 wasn't just a one-trick pony.
Right. And it passed with flying colors, scored really highly on all of them.
So not just a math and coding whiz. It's got like a broad understanding of the world too. I'm sensing a theme here. This AI is pretty good at a lot of things.
That's one way to put it. They even tested it on creative writing and general question answering.
Okay, I have to know. Did it write any poems or anything?
No poems this time. But it did really well on those tasks too, which again shows its versatility.
Okay, this is all seriously impressive. But even the best AI models have their weaknesses, right? Were there any areas where DeepSeek-R1 struggled?
Well, no, AI is perfect. And they did mention a few areas for improvement. Like it can still be a little finicky with software engineering tasks.
Finicky?
It needs very specific instructions and is really sensitive to how the problems are phrased.
So it's like a brilliant but temperamental artist?
Yeah.
Got to know how to talk to it.
Exactly. And they also mentioned some limitations with function calling and multi-turn conversations and handling those really complex role-playing scenarios,
Yeah.
or in generating structured JSON output.
Okay, so some areas where it's still got some learning to do.
Yeah. But now think about this training we've been discussing.
Yeah, all those benchmarks.
Yeah.
It must take a ton of computing power to do all that.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking supercomputer level stuff.
Okay, so for those of us without access to a supercomputer, is this technology even remotely within reach? Could I run this thing on my laptop?
That's where things get interesting. That's where the concept of distillation comes in.
Distillation?
Yeah. It's like taking all the knowledge of a master chef and teaching it to a talented apprentice.
So you create a smaller, more streamlined version of the AI.
Exactly. And get this, they were actually able to create smaller versions of DeepSeek-R1 using base models like Qwen and Llama. And those smaller versions actually performed better than their larger counterparts on some tasks.
Wait, what? The smaller AI was actually smarter than the bigger one? How is that even possible?
It really shows the power of this distillation technique. They were able to kind of distill the essence of DeepSeek-R1's reasoning abilities into a smaller, more efficient package.
Okay. That's kind of mind-blowing. So how much smaller are we talking here? Give me a concrete example.
Well, for instance, they created DeepSeek-R1 Distill Qwen 7b.
7 billion what exactly?
7 billion parameters. Think of parameters like little knobs in the AI's brain that it can adjust to learn. The more parameters, the more complex the AI.
Yeah.
So a 7 billion parameter model is still pretty big, but it's a lot smaller than the full-fledged DeepSeek-R1.
Okay, got it. So what could this smaller version do?
Well, on that super tough A math exam, it still managed to pass at one score of 55.5%. Not as high as the larger version, but still pretty impressive for a much smaller model. And here's the crazy part. This smaller 7 billion parameter model actually outperformed a much larger model called QWQ32B Preview, which has 32 billion parameters on several benchmarks.
So smaller is better in this case. That's wild. What are the implications of that?
It's huge because it means that this advanced AI reasoning could be accessible to way more people. We could see it used in all sorts of things, like personal tutoring apps, scientific research, even on devices that aren't supercomputers.
So this could potentially democratize access to cutting-edge AI. That's a game changer.
Absolutely. And that's just one of the reasons why this DeepSeek-R1 research is so exciting.
Yeah, this is all really groundbreaking stuff. So we've talked a lot about what DeepSeek-R1 can do, but what about the bigger picture? What does all this mean for the future of AI?
I think it's safe to say we're entering a whole new era of AI.
It really does feel like a turning point. And you know what keeps coming back to me?
What's that?
That whole thing with DeepSeek-R1 and how it learned to reason completely on its own.
Yeah, with just those rewards to guide it.
Right, like it had that aha moment when it figured out to slow down and actually think things through. It's mind-blowing.
And that focus on pure reinforcement learning,
Yeah.
it raises some really big questions.
Like what?
Like, what if this leads to AI developing totally new ways of thinking, ways that we as humans can't even grasp?
Okay, now that's both exciting and kind of scary. Are we talking about AI that could potentially, outthink us? Solve problems we haven't even thought of?
It's possible, but it's important to remember these AIs are still tools. Incredibly sophisticated tools, but tools nonetheless.
Yeah.
And their behavior is ultimately shaped by the data they're trained on and the rewards they're given.
So we're still the ones kind of steering the ship, even if the AI is charting the course.
Exactly. And that's why it's so important to have these open discussions about AI development. Which brings us back to DeepSeek AI's decision to open source DeepSeek-R1.
Yeah, I've got to say it's a pretty bold move. You don't see companies just giving away their cutting-edge research every day.
It's a big deal. It means the whole AI community can study the model, figure out how it ticks, and contribute to its development. That kind of collaboration is key if we want to make sure AI is developed responsibly.
It's like they're saying, hey, we're all in this together. Let's figure this whole AI thing out as a team.
Exactly. And for those listening who want to learn more about DeepSeek-R1, we'll include links to all the resources we used for this deep dive. The research paper study guides, FAQs, the whole shebang.
Definitely check those out if you want to explore the world of AI reasoning for yourself. Just a heads up, though. It's a rabbit hole that might lead to some late-night research sessions.
Worth it, though. This stuff is truly groundbreaking.
Well, thanks to your expert guidance, I feel like I actually understand what all of this means for the future of AI. It's a little daunting, maybe even a little scary, but definitely fascinating.
It's been a pleasure exploring this with you.
And with you, our listeners. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of DeepSeek-R1. Until next time, stay curious.